Welcome to The Controversial Truth, where we bring you content on health and wealth that nobody would ever tell you until now. I'm your host, Dr. Victoria Munoz, and today we have a very special guest for you. Stephanie Kreun is a functional diagnostic nutrition and certified wellness practitioner. She has a degree in nutrition and exercise science, and for 20 years worked in pharmaceutical sales, selling drugs for digestive disorders. She then decided to go back to school for functional nutrition. Stephanie has a hybrid practice in Gilbert, Arizona, both in person and online. She joined an integrative collaborative 2.5 years ago called Integrative Health Center of Arizona, where she uses a whole person approach looking for root cause of disease. Stephanie works with a variety of conditions, including mold toxicity, ADHD, autism, anxiety, autoimmunity, and various GI disorders. What makes Stephanie unique is that she also specializes in functional testing and uses symptoms combined with test results to design nutrition plans to help the body detox and heal. Stephanie has formed amazing relationships in the community and enjoys speaking to groups of people that desire wellness education. She also has a passion for foster and adoption care, as her youngest child is adopted from foster care. Please help me in welcoming Stephanie Kreun. Stephanie, I'm so glad to have you here today. Up till today, we've had some great conversations about food as medicine, and so I see this as an opportunity to continue that conversation, except that now we get to give that quality and value to our viewers. So I would like to start with you talking about your background. What brought you to becoming a nutritional specialist?
Yeah, thank you for having me here today and for talking about this. I agree with you. It's underlooked and undervalued how important food is to the body and helping in the healing process. I feel like it's foundational. So how I got here, my degree is in exercise science and nutrition, and I actually left that world for a while and did pharmaceutical sales for about 20 years, specifically in digestive disease. And in 2010, the company I was working for had a really big layoff, and I was a part of the layoff and found myself home, just wondering what's the next phase of my life. And I really wanted to go back to what I love. I didn't want to go back into pharmaceuticals because that wasn't healing.
Right.
That was giving Band-Aids. And I really wanted to be helpful in being more proactive in people's healing, instead of on the other side, which was reactivity and just giving a drug for symptoms.
Right.
So I actually went back to school for functional training, specifically in nutrition. And what really also ignited that passion was helping to heal my kids that were very young and showing up with asthma and allergies and eczema. And then in 2010, we also got a phone call that we were being chosen for adoption for a baby. And that kiddo came home. We didn't have a lot of information on him. And he was 5 months old, and it rocked our world because he cried all day and all night. And as a mom, you just want to help and help his body to heal. And I dove into food and naturally healing. And fast forward, he is diagnosed with autism, high functioning autism, and very severe ADHD, and a lot of other things. I don't really care about the diagnoses. They were helpful in getting some services, but
Sure.
really, my passion was really ignited in helping to heal my kids. And so that's who I am today in the world. I just show up as an advocate for healing anyone really with a chronic condition, and educating them on the power of what they put in their body on a daily basis matters.
Because you would think it was common sense, but it really isn't in this day and age.
It's really not.
Yeah, I mean, people go out into the world and they look for food, right, for lack of a better term, and
Food.
yeah, they go to the grocery store and they think, well, if I read the label and it doesn't have this or that in it, it must be healthy, but it's not. If it's in a box, just forget about it.
That's just it. If you're actually reading a label, it's already against you, right? Because a whole food doesn't have a label. I mean, you have animal products, obviously, but
sure.
When you are looking in the produce section, you're not reading what's an ingredient is in it.
Right. It's broccoli or it's
exactly
kale or
exactly. Yeah, I think of that. It was interesting. I was talking to an individual that was talking about how she's vegetarian and she loves these Beyond Burgers, right? And I was like, oh, let's dive into that and let's take a look at that. It has a label, and the label is deep, right, with ingredients.
Yeah.
But you look at it, beef is just beef. So really, like, we don't really, we need to be educated on labels, and we need to be educated on what we're putting in our body. But really, when we go whole foods,
right,
we don't have to dive deep into that.
And really the only thing we have to concern ourselves with produce, for example, is make sure it's not GMO.
Exactly.
And make sure it's organic.
Exactly.
Those two things.
Yes.
And that's, once you know it's organic, certified organic, then it's pretty much safe to say you can buy it and induce health.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And I do like to educate on, the environmental workers group. I love to give my clients a lot of resources so that, you probably use the term too as well. I'm not going to fish for you, but I want to teach you.
Right.
I just want to teach you how to be out there in the world. You really shouldn't have to see me for a long period of time, because I want to educate you and teach you so you can show up for yourself out there in the world.
Right. It's all about empowering people.
It is.
Yeah. Because people's experience of seeing a doctor, for example, is they show up, the doctor gives them a diagnosis, so now they're labeled, right? And then they write a prescription, they're out the door. Patient has no idea how to manage their health, how to mitigate illness, and why they're taking this pill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the bridge. Well, that bridge doesn't exist. And that's really where I feel like a nutritionist comes in and says, well, let me teach you, because the doctor doesn't have time, really. Their schedule is so very full.
Right. Unless
there's someone like you where you actually have the time that you can sit and spend with them and do some education. But a lot of times in the conventional medicine, they're just every 15 minutes seeing a patient. So they don't have that educational time to give.
Right.
And then people are left out there floundering.
Mm-hmm. And conventional medical doctors are not educated in nutrition.
At all.
Zero. Yep.
Yes.
So they'll say, oh, cut the salt out or cut the sugar out, and that is it. And then patients still don't feel good.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't know what that means.
So they'll go online and try and figure it out, or they pick up books that, may give them some information, partial information, but not the full story.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's define what a nutritional specialist is, because there might be some questions about that. Registered dietitian is not a nutritional specialist. And so let's kind of debunk that myth.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like there's a spectrum, right? And you'll meet a lot of different individuals that have a background in nutrition, but it really does come down to what they've studied and what their specialty is. And you'll find that even in naturopathic, right? Do I know homeopathics, or do I know, more functional testing? And so you really get a very big broad spectrum. And you'll have those who have I have a degree in nutrition, so a dietitian would have that as well.
Right.
And then they would move forward and do, their master's degree and an internship in dietetics. Typically, that's more of a clinical setting that they would go into. That was not attractive to me.
Right.
And so for myself, having that degree in nutrition I have that as a background, but then I chose to go into functional nutrition.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little confusing. I don't really know what that means. And basically it just means I'm trained on functional diagnostic testing. So I can recommend those testing, but I'm also trained in reading those testing and reading those tests. And then I can implement a nutrition plan based on the symptoms of the client and the results of the test.
Right.
So one doesn't win over the other. We like to bring them together to give us a greater picture of who that person is. And so, and then design a plan based on that information. And that is going to be very different than somebody who is trained in just nutrition.
Sure.
So that would be somebody that could write a meal plan for you, and can give, grocery store guidance, label reading. Dietitians would do the same, but again, they would be more in a clinical setting. So you'll see them in the hospitals.
Sure. Right.
And then you have the functional world too.
And so let's dive a little deeper into, excuse me, the clinical setting and the functional world. Let's kind of define that.
So in the clinical setting, in my experience, they're more governed by, you will find that aligning more with the food pyramid in My Plate, right? That's the training there. On the functional side, I feel like we're more trained in the food as medicine, and we're trained in really the bio-individuality of each person. And I did not receive that type of training when I received my degree from a state university. And so that's how I differentiate that. And I wanted to go deeper into the biochemistry of the individual and the possibility of finding opportunities of healing. Don't see that on that clinical setting.
Sure. So it's with the clinical setting, it's more like a one size fits all, right? This is a diabetic patient, so this is what I do, or this is somebody with high cholesterol or hypertension or whatever, heart disease, and it's more of a, pull it out of the folder and here's your diet plan. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating that it's more of a fixed plan rather than an individualized plan.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. That is absolutely what you're more definitive in more of a box of this is what works. This is your plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And so would you say within the functional nutritional arena that being able to do the testing and analyzing sets you apart from other functional nutritional specialists?
Yes, absolutely. And I say a lot, you probably experience this, maybe when you're meeting with people, you have already an idea of what's going on in that individual's body, but I don't want to guess. And so you want to test so you don't have to guess. Right?
Yeah.
And then I also feel like when you get the results of a test, you also get this desire of the other individual because they can see it in black and white on the test of, oh wow, that's happening. I'm all in.
Yeah.
Right? And so we just get that buy-in too of, I don't want to have all of this inflammation. A gut zoomer, for example, test. And you are testing for non-inflammatory markers in the digestive system, and you can see that tangible in front of you. This inflammation is happening. Instead of just guessing, I think there's probably inflammation, and I think let's take out these types of foods. Now they're actually seeing it.
Yeah.
And I really think that it really is motivating to keep people on track for healing.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for patients to come to me and say, well, this is what I have. And I'll say, well, and you know what? 9 out of 10 times that's not the full picture.
Yeah.
And so by testing, we get a more clinical look at what's going on with the patient. And like I tell patients, I say, I base my treatment on clinical findings. It's not a guessing game here.
Right.
And even if you've been exposed to an environmental toxin or maybe another doctor tested you positive for something, there's always more to the picture. It's very comprehensive in the way the body works. It's like mold toxicity, for example. There's also leaky gut and other things that are going on. So we have to see what kind of other things the patient is also reacting to bring them into wellness,
Right.
and to know everything about the patient. It's not uncommon for patients to go to a doctor and the doctor is very micro-focused, on this one thing, and then they'll treat that one thing somehow, usually with pharmaceutical, if they're not, like a more functional doctor. And then the patient may be well for a little while, but then they get sick again.
Right.
It's because they didn't address the cause.
Yeah,
Right.
I was just thinking that as you were talking, and it's really because you need to go upstream, right? So the downstream is I'm sitting here with this, and I as the physician am going to give you this, and I feel better for a little while. But you never went upstream to see how I got in this place to begin with, which is root cause.
Exactly.
And if you don't find the root cause and treat and help the body heal from that root cause, you always stay in this place.
Right. And illness is never, it's never a single thing, and there's never a single silver bullet.
Right.
And so we got to look at the patient as a whole, right? Which is what you do as well. And then say, okay, let's see how we can bring you back into wellness and wholeness, right?
Yeah.
So kind of give me an idea of what it looks like when somebody comes to you for help.
Yeah. So typically I like to do an intake first. And I love if they've already had blood work or any type of testing that they've had, I ask that they send that to me beforehand. And the reason being is I just, again, want a better picture of who I'm getting ready to sit down with and talk to. And from that first appointment, we really make a decision together on what the next steps are. Is it going to be testing? Do I have enough information that we can start a plan right away? I like to typically start them at least on a nutrition plan, based on their symptoms, and then dive deeper and then wait for testing information to come back and implement the next plan.
Right.
I do work a lot with other practitioners, naturopathic doctors, functional nurse practitioners, physician's assistants. I'm a great referral source for them because, again, it's that piece of, an example is I work with a nurse practitioner that does a lot with thyroid and a lot with hormones, and that's her specialty. But when it comes to helping to heal the gut, she just sends them right over. Go see Stephanie, she can do the testing for you and help you with your next steps.
Yeah.
And so I love to work alongside of other practitioners that have their specialty and I have mine, and we work together really, really well.
Right.
In helping to get the patient to wellness, like you were saying.
Right. And I know as a doctor I can't do everything, and I'm not gonna sit down and make meal plans. I have no time for that. And they have to pay me a whole lot of money to do that. So
they're very time consuming.
Yes. And so it's important to have a team, a good team, a referral base, then people that you work with on a regular basis to get that patient into that wellness spectrum that you want them in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody has their specialty. And I tell clients all the time, we need to have a toolbox. And I'm not the tool, I am one of them,
right,
alongside of a lot of other healers that help the body.
And that's a smart practitioner that builds a team.
Yes.
Because none of us can do everything.
No.
We try sometimes to do as much as we can, but then we say, okay, you got to go see Stephanie because she's going to help you get on point, get your routine, your diet in check, and some meal planning. Because if I say to a patient, for example, I'll give them a general idea of what I want them to do, like Mediterranean diet, which is a common diet that I recommend, and I'll be specific depending on what's going on with the patient. Like if they're a diabetic, they have to minimize even fruit.
Yes.
And I typically take grains out of the diet just because if we were living in Italy or someplace like that, the grains would be healthier.
Yep.
But in this country, because of the way the government allows things to be grown, there isn't a single grain out there, unless it's organic.
Absolutely.
And, that is going to work toward health.
Absolutely.
So typically I'll say, we'll replace that with a sweet potato or something like that. But I can be specific in that regard, but then, getting them organized to put their meals together,
Right.
that's not something I even have the desire to do, you know?
Yeah, I understand.
And some people are really good about, like, I love to cook, I love to meal prep, so those patients are typically good unless they need a little more guidance. But, you know, then you get the patients that just are used to grab and go.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is not a grab and go anymore. If you want to grab and go, it's going to be the meals that you prepared on Sunday for the week.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah.
how do you meal plan for patients?
Yeah, and I tell them that is no longer serving you, right? Your
Right.
body is showing up with this right now,
Uh-huh.
and change has to happen for your body to change.
Like, how's that working for you?
And so, exactly, and finding out their willingness.
Right.
So I can only help you so far,
Mhm.
and the rest is on you. And so it's really a decision time for you, right? And you have to have those hard discussions of how in it are you? Because I can only take you so far. I'm not in your house. I'm not in your kitchen. I'm not doing this for you.
Yeah.
Where are you? And how willing are you? And sometimes, you know, you have the patients and clients that say, I really don't know how to be in the kitchen. I don't know how to do things. And that's where the baby steps come in.
Yeah.
Of if I tell you I give you a food plan and say, you're going to go make these dinners this week. That is overwhelming, and they're out. They're peace out. Like, I cannot get there, right?
Yeah, you got to meet them where they're at.
Yes. And then where can I take you? I can take you this one step. We're going to focus on increasing fiber at this point.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it really easy for you. We're going to take this one dish and you're going to make 3 of them at this one time.
Yeah.
And those, you're going to have them 3 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be successful at that. And you're going to be so proud of yourself because you made that one dish.
Right.
We just take them along the way, that one step. Because we need to feel the successes in that one step to take it to the next step.
Right.
If we don't feel that success and we feel like a failure, which is easy for us to feel, we need that one success that goes, oh, I can do this. There it was. I did it.
Right.
And then you take the next step.
And changing your habits can be overwhelming.
100%.
Yeah. And that's...
But you have to stack them, right? So the habit stacking is a lot what I talk to my clients about.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So we stack our habits. So it's one habit that I'm going to change. We can't do all of it in 1 week. I can do one thing. And that week I nailed that. And so the next week, what's the one habit we're going to change? I'm going to implement that. That's now stacked because you already crushed the one from the week before.
Right.
And you're doing that. So now we have a new habit. And the next week, it's another habit that came in. I nailed that. All of a sudden, at the end of a month, I have 4 new habits that I've created.
Right.
At the end of 8 weeks, I have 8 new habits. 12 weeks, I have 12.
Uh-huh.
So you look back where you started and where you're at the end of the 12 weeks, you're like, what? And you celebrate that, right? And I love to celebrate with my clients because a lot of times you sit with people and what's the first thing they say? Well, I'm not doing this and I haven't been good. Really?
Yeah.
You haven't been good at all? Tell me one good thing that happened last week. And I think that we really have to shift people's mindset into what they're doing well because they really want to focus on what they're not doing, which they're going to keep not doing then. Right? So we have to shift over to what did you do well? I start off every one of my client appointments is what's going well.
Yeah.
Because they want to talk about what they're not doing.
Yeah, and that's way too common.
Yes.
And that's what they're going to manifest then.
Yes.
They're going to manifest everything they're not doing.
Yep.
To the 10th degree. And they're going to keep not doing it even more and more. Yeah.
Yes. And so we need to start off with what are you crushing? What are you doing well? And really give attention to that.
Right.
And then we can work on the things that they want, like what kind of challenges, roadblocks, what kind of things are showing up for you. And then you become a problem solver alongside of them. And an example, I had a client that says, there's a couple days a week I just don't have meals prepared. Okay, let's find a service for you. So 3 days a week, you're going to make your meals, but 2 to 3 days a week, you'll have a little help.
Yeah.
And there are some local companies and even some online that deliver to you that are very clean. They use clean oils. They use whole food ingredients. They're using great seasonings. There's no additives and preservatives in it that I would be concerned about that for someone's body. And that will be enough to give them success so that they can have a really great week and not go through a drive-through.
Right. Because it's tempting.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I have patients that say, it's just too hard for me to eat healthy because I'm busy and, I could just go through a drive-through and it's like, well, we got to talk about how we can change this, right? Because it's a habit. And like you said, baby steps, because like I'll give a patient, for example, a treatment plan. There'll be a lot of things on there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Let's start here, and then next week,
Yes.
then they'll come back and same thing. I've accomplished this, but I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I haven't started this yet. It's okay. So what are you doing?
What are you
right?
doing?
Yeah. And that's the important thing to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And then they feel empowered.
Exactly.
Because if you're focusing with your client or patient on what they're not doing, then it just takes the power out of them, right? And they just feel like a failure. That's not really what we want to do, is it?
No, you want them to leave the appointment feeling encouraged and inspired to continue on. And hope, right? You're delivering a hope to them. I don't have to stay in this place. No, you don't have to stay here, but you have to implement these changes.
Yes. I can't do it for you.
No.
Right.
No.
And
I can guide you.
Oh yeah, and I have patients who come in, they want it. They want it bad because they're like, I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Yes. Yes. And I love to have the conversation of, on a scale from 0 to 10, where are you today? I'm a 10. Great. And I want you to keep that 10 in front of you all the time.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not going to paint this picture as this is going to be easy. I tell them, you're going to have hard days. Of course you will. You will have days that you might even want to quit this.
Right.
And so I'm very connected to writing down goals, and I encourage my clients to write things down because I think words are powerful.
Yeah.
And the written word is powerful. And so I say to them, you write your goal and you put it up on your mirror, because you start your day looking at yourself, brushing your teeth, and that's where you end your day.
Put on your forehead if you have to.
Exactly. Write it everywhere you need it to be. On your computer screen, in your car, wherever it is you go often. So you're reminded of what your goal is, and you keep it at the forefront of your mind, because that is your motivation.
Right. And it's about implementing this for a lifetime, not just like a crash diet or a 6-week program. That's not what you're trying to do here.
No.
What you're trying to do is help people to learn how to go out into the world and be a healthy human being for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's that word life, right? You're making a lifestyle change.
Right.
You're not doing a diet. I don't like the word diet. To me, that's a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is a lifestyle change that you're implementing.
Yep. And then once they start to feel better, they become addicted to the healthy things they're doing for themselves.
Yes.
I have that conversation all the time with patients. It's like, I'm so addicted to sugar. I don't know how I'm going to give it up. Well, I'll tell you how you're going to give it up. One step at a time.
Yeah.
Stop buying it and start replacing it with, nature sugars, for example, like, low glycemic fruits.
Yes.
And then they become addicted to the way that tastes. It's about changing your palate, right?
It is. Yeah. And when that happens, that's amazing too, is that I've had clients say, I tasted a strawberry differently this time.
Yeah.
Because that coating wasn't on your tongue. Like we cleaned the fish tank, right?
Yeah, right.
Like we cleaned it up
the
in
scum.
there. Yeah, got the scum out. And you actually detoxed some of the residual of that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's gone, that's clean, and your taste buds actually can taste what a real piece of fruit tastes like.
Yeah.
And you can taste the sweetness in it that possibly you didn't taste before, because your taste for sweet was up here because it was coming from processed sugar.
Yep.
And now your taste has changed, and now you can really taste the flavor.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that these changes are taking not only on a neurological level, the brain chemistry changes, but also on the cellular level.
Yes.
Because the cells become used to a certain nutrient or substance, right? Being exposed to it. And when a cell is sick, that's all it knows is sickness. We have to tell the cell how to think differently. It doesn't, so when we start giving it different information, then it starts processing it differently, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about how food is medicine, because often people think that, well, I'm not feeling bad, so it must not be doing anything wrong, or I don't have symptoms of disease, so I must be healthy, which, as we know, is not the case.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, and I really believe that most of us are walking around with massive deficiencies, right?
Right.
And the deficiencies are caused because the diet is not where it needs to be, but also our food, right? Let's talk about that for a second. Really isn't where it needs to be. Our soil's not as fertile. So I do feel like, again, on the cellular level, there are massive deficiencies. And so when we have a body that's eating processed foods and not eating whole foods, then because the processed foods, everything's synthetic that's in it, nothing's real and natural. So imagine on a cellular level, your cells are literally starving. Starving for food. Starving for nutrition.
Somebody massively overweight and so undernourished.
And yes, and the opposite can be true as well, right? I see this in kids, and parents will think, well, they're fine because they're skinny, but you'll see them eating such nutrient depleted calories all day long. There's no good nutrition coming in, right? And so they're actually so nutritionally depleted that there's no possible way their cells are communicating to their brain the right information. And we'll see that a lot, like, you know, in the example of like ADHD, that the child will be maybe really thin, but the brain is not functioning because it's not getting the nutrients that it needs. The cells are not communicating.
And, you know, food manufacturers know that they're putting addictive chemicals in their foods to make you keep wanting to go back to it.
Absolutely.
So the brain becomes addicted, just like heroin. To these foods, these food additives, and the sugar, you know, the high fructose corn syrup, and every kind of other processed sugar that they put in foods. And people don't realize why they can't stop eating it.
It's a dopamine rush. Is what they're getting. Right? So you and I might get it from going for a run and exercising and lifting. We're like, oh, that felt so amazing. That felt so good. That's what people are getting from food. And you're absolutely right. The scientists are in a lab, and they are specifically making it so that it hits those taste buds. Everything's turning on and igniting. The brain is, for a moment, super happy, and then it comes down and it wants it again. So there it goes, and then now you are in this cycle of craving and crashing.
Right. And not to get too much off subject, but then also advertisers understand how they can draw people into these things and make them believe that their food is going to do something good for them. Like, for example, a fortified cereal. It's full of sugar and crap.
Hate cereal.
But it's got, you know, it's fortified with vitamin A, vitamin D, blah, 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 you know, and it's like, you know.
It's synthetic.
It's
fortified.
And, you know, most of the synthetic vitamins that they fortify with don't even really absorb well. You know, so you're not getting any amount of health out of that at all. And to piggyback on that,
cereal, I couldn't hate anything more than cereal, because we're starting our morning off with sugar, carbohydrates. What you start with, the body will crave all day long. So you're breaking a fast. You're coming off of your fast and you're breaking it with high carbohydrates and high sugar. And that's what the body will want all day long.
You're starting your day off wrong.
Totally. And how many kids start their day off with that? Or the schools. See, I could talk all day about this.
School food is, the worst.
I have a box of cereal. I have conventional milk, dairy, or chocolate milk next to a muffin. That is not a balanced meal.
It's all full of hormones and preservatives and GMO.
Absolutely.
And then we wonder why, well, you know, kids shouldn't have to sit all day. They're not meant to sit all day. But in addition to that, why can't they focus?
Correct.
It's because of the crap we're feeding them. It's not even food.
No.
You know, it's not food. It's just, I don't know what to call it.
I hate calling it food.
It's just junk.
I have a hard time. It is. I have a hard time labeling that food because it's not.
It's like the walking human garbage can.
Absolutely. You're just putting all of these chemicals, manufactured, man-made, in your body. And you're right in the marketing of that too. And what the advertisement, the food industry, it is an industry. It's an industry.
It's all about drawing you in, getting you addicted.
Yes.
And making money off that.
Yes. And so you see commercials oh, well, I play basketball and the NBA drinks Gatorade, so I should probably drink Gatorade.
Yeah.
No, you just need water. That's
It's
it.
going to make me a good
That's all
basketball
you
player.
need. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's a battle for parents because then you have, right, there's nothing that's out there supporting us. We're one person in a home trying to make change. Mm-hmm. And you have all these industries that have a lot of money that are giving messages to our families and to individuals.
Right. Time to turn the TV off.
Absolutely. Or be very intentional about, yes, and
yes.
be intentional about what you're watching.
Yeah.
Meaning there aren't any commercials in it because you're intentional. There's ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And
I do that. I subscribe to Gaia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Commercial advertising free.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Yes.
And even my YouTube has no commercials because I choose to pay for it.
Yes.
And, and then I watch certain things.
Yes.
In addition to educational things, I like stand-up comedy, so there's that.
Yeah, that's fun. But we need to laugh.
Laughter is medicine, too.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to bringing the person into wellness than just changing their diet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when a person comes to you directly, not necessarily a referral from a physician, mm-hmm. when do you refer out?
Oh, that's a great question too. So if they have blood work that needs to be, well, I just did actually the other day. So I asked a client to get deeper blood work, and I'm not covered by insurance. So if they have insurance and they can get blood work through their insurance, then go to your physician and get blood work.
Right.
And he did, and I do ask for a pretty deep panel of blood work, which most conventional medicine doctors think that's not appropriate, but thankfully this doctor did, and because he was symptomatic and we needed to know a little bit deeper into that blood. Mm-hmm. So I cannot diagnose, but the blood work did come back, and I could see some elevated antibodies that was showing some autoimmune, so I referred him out.
Okay, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that practitioner was able to give the diagnoses of what he had and can now manage that side from, I can manage the nutritional side,
right,
and that doctor can now manage the medical side of that.
Right.
And it's a great relationship.
Yeah.
And this person felt so validated, right, that, wow, you were able to send me out, see something, send me out. I now know what it is that why I'm so fatigued, and why, all of the things that his body was presenting with. He's able to see the connection and have an answer. Right. But then on our side, we're able to, okay, let's talk about how you're going to manage your stress. Let's talk about what exercise looks for you right now. Let's talk about what nutrition looks like for you right now. Right. Now he'll see that doctor every probably 3 months, but he'll see me much more frequently. Yeah. As we're really dialing in his lifestyle so that his body can heal.
So is there a maintenance plan that patients are what do you call them, clients or patients?
I call them clients, okay. Yeah.
That your clients maintain on with you? Like, for example, with me, my patients do managed care. Once they're balanced in where we want them to be, the requirement is every 6 months for blood work, unless something is off. So do you have something like that with your clients? It's very individualized depending on what their needs are. I have some clients that I see once a month because they need that check-in. Right. And they enjoy it, right? Yeah. Just having that connectedness. Yeah. Some clients, it is every 3 months, every 12 weeks. I do in my practice because I feel like, we've just talked about it, how nutrition is foundational and it's everything. Yeah. When I have somebody eating a whole foods diet, but we're still not quite where we need to get them, I do really love to do hair tissue mineral analysis. Okay. Because I like to see what the cells are doing from a standpoint of minerals. Right. So am I depleted? Am I holding too much? Is it a loss pattern in my body, so my body's not absorbing it at all? And what does that look like? And so once I do that, and it tells me toxic heavy metals. So once I was going to ask, yeah. So once I can see what that is, and I get them typically on a regimen, I would have them be on that for 12 weeks, and then do a check-in. I see. And what does a check-in look like? So I actually like to retest and see how we're doing. Sure. Okay. Especially if they were either really high in some toxic metals or really low.
Here, can I give an example?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I have a little boy that we just did a second retest with, has autism, but he's very high functioning. And I looked at the test and thought, I think there's some hidden possible copper here, and which it can be very aggravating to the body. And I said, so let's work out really on, and he had a lot of elevated sodium, which tells me inflammation at the root as well. And we did do an organic acid test, so we were working on some gut healing, and we did a lot with food, and he had some toxic heavy metals. So I had him specifically doing some binders for those, doing some, mom was amazing with food, amazing, this little boy is 5. Chronically sick, lots of ear infections. He made it through the entire winter without any sickness.
Wow.
So immune system is starting to recover and do what it's supposed to do. Second retest, copper shot off the charts, which I was excited about because it meant he was moving it through his body.
Oh, okay, I see.
He was moving it through his body.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so
as the body starts to detox, you start to see samples in the hair of these toxic chemicals.
Yes.
And then what do you do at that point?
And so then we actually keep moving, right? So we did a recheck. I'm excited to see that copper's moving through the body.
Right.
Yes. And so we'll do a little changes here and there with his formulation and what he's taking, because we want to keep this movement going.
Right.
So eventually, so obviously I'll retest him again in 12 weeks, and eventually you want to see those levels come down.
Right.
But we know that we turned on the body's capability to move those metals through.
And so maybe initially you'll see it go up.
Yes.
And does the patient ever experience like feeling a little more sick at first until they get better?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes, but I hope to mitigate that. That's not ideal, what I want. And I really like using binders in that, because if we're moving toxic metals through and then we start to see symptoms come up, then I say bind more.
So what do you use, like chlorella, activated charcoal, clay? What do you use for binders?
Mostly clay. Depending on the metals that they're showing up with.
Sure.
So copper, I really like zeolite. Mycotoxins, I like humic and fulvic, and zeolite as well. I kind of do it depending on the metals that they have, but I don't like to stay with one binder for a long period of time.
Right.
So I like to rotate them.
I see. Okay. And then once they're clear, then you can start to wean them off the binder, and providing that they maintain a healthy diet. And mitigate exposures. Do you talk about exposures to the parents too? Like what kind of chemicals are using in the house or personal hygiene products?
Yes, I love that you brought this up too, because that's a part of the plan, right? Is especially when we see the information. You know, for this one, I said, where's the copper coming from? Do we have copper pipes? Or where is it coming from? A lot of times, actually, it comes in utero from mom. If there's been a history of birth control or a copper IUD.
I see.
Right? So it can come from that. But so we talk about where the exposures are coming from, and absolutely I give my clients, I have a handout of here's my top favorite products that I've already done research on and I know they're very clean. I give them resources like, Environmental Workers Group, Skin Deep. They have a database on there. They have an app. So, right, you have the QR code so you can actually scan the products and see where the products come up.
Sure.
And you know that if the lower the number is, the less toxic it is. I give my clients recipes of making their own cleaning solution. It's easy.
Yeah, it's
right?
super easy.
It's very easy.
It's almost too easy.
Yeah. Vinegar.
Vinegar and water.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You can kill the ants outside with it too.
Exactly. Yes. So again, going back to empowering them. Yeah. You can do this. And I will say I had a conversation with a mom last week actually, where we had a total tox burden test that came back. So that test for mycotoxins, environmental toxins, and heavy metals. Right. And then we also had an HTMA test come back, and the toxic burden on this little kiddo was big. And I hadn't even met them yet, and I could see metabolically this little girl slowing down. I had not seen her, met her. I knew no history because she was referred over specifically for this testing. And I could tell she was most likely overweight. And while I'm meeting with the parents, the mom says, my daughter's overweight. And I said, I could see that on her testing. I could already see that metabolically she was slowing down.
Yeah.
And I could see that just from the hair tissue mineral analysis test.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As calcium rises in the tissue level, potassium will come down typically. And calcium, we need to find it just in our bones and teeth. That's it.
Right.
99% of it goes to bones and teeth. But if it's not being shuttled into the bone, it will get stored in the tissue. A lot of times it can block nutrients from being absorbed into the thyroid. And so can metals.
Yeah.
And so
the thyroid is very delicate and
very
and very sensitive to any kind of environmental toxin.
Yes. And so there was an accumulation happening. Water, huge conversation. That's my number one conversation with clients.
Like what kind of water?
What are you drinking?
Right. And even bottled water is like,
That's my number one. It is mostly what you're putting in your body on a daily basis, and our skin is our largest organ, and is it being filtered?
Right.
From what's coming through your faucet. What are you taking a bath in? What are you taking a shower in?
Right.
And I see high uranium, specifically in the Southwest. That is a radioactive element.
Yeah.
That's blocking our cells to being able to
absorb
nutrients.
Why would you soak in that, right?
We're soaking in that. High uranium, specifically here in Arizona. So filtering that out, that is a number one conversation.
Yeah. And how do you recommend that for your clients? Because, full house water, filtration systems can be expensive.
Yeah.
And, there's the Berkey and there's, I don't know about the Brita, but, it's probably just filters maybe a handful of things out, nothing. Yeah.
No, and I was a Berkey lover for years, and it's now in my shed.
Okay, so what do you recommend now?
And because the most recent research that I saw on Berkey is that they cannot verify that it filters glyphosate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I want to be sure that what I'm putting in my body is pure water.
Right.
And so the only way that I could confirm that I was doing that was distilled.
Oh, okay. And then do you add any minerals to
it?
I do. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I add minerals back in.
So there's kind of a process, like a recipe that you give your clients to set up their,
Yeah, and I say, okay, here's best, here's good, right? I give you where can you come in at?
Right.
Distilling is definitely a process, right?
Right.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, you don't want to get it in the plastic jug and bring it home.
No, exactly. So I have a countertop distiller that runs, and that's best level. And I tell people that's an investment.
Yeah.
Right? I wish I would have gone bigger because I didn't know how much I was going to love it. So my countertop one isn't quite, it takes about 4 hours to get a gallon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's running all the time.
Yeah.
And it's steamy, so it's hot. It's in my laundry room. It's hot in there, and it's loud.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Oh.
Those are the two cons of it. But I have amazing, beautiful water that comes from it.
Yeah, and amazing health.
It's great. I found a difference in my skin and my energy when I switched over to distilled water.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's best case. And then, my next level would be there are plenty of, I'm not a huge fan of RO. I think it can carry a lot of mold and bacteria.
I see.
So as long as they do some type of light on it that can catch that.
I see.
I found that mold in the body when I really tracked it and found where could it be coming from. It's really not in your house. Okay, we figured out it's not in your house. I found it sometimes to be from the RO, so they were drinking it.
I see. And so there must be foods that contribute to mold too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Peanuts.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Peanuts are a big one. Corn.
Oh.
Coffee.
Coffee's used, and chocolate.
Yes.
And unless it's like a specific brand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always pull, if it's a heavy coffee drinker and they don't want to give up their coffee, then I encourage them to upgrade. And there's not a lot. I think there's about 5 brands that are certified to be mold free.
I know Bulletproof is, and there's one called Precise or Precision or
Purity.
Purity, that's it.
Purity.
Yeah.
Life Boost.
Okay.
there are a couple more.
I just knew the two.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
There's, it's at the top of my head.
so organic doesn't mean mold free.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we can see that in testing too, right? Ochratoxin A could be really high.
Right.
The most recent research actually is telling us that ochratoxin A, if you go to PubMed and look, they are finding and linking it to water damaged buildings too. So that's the hard part from a mycotoxin test,
Yeah.
is you're trying to figure out, yes, there's a food component here, but it could be in your home as well if you had
Right.
a water leak. But yes, I've run detoxes before, and when I run a detox, I'll take people off of grains because those are moldy.
Yeah.
I grew up in Illinois, where there are grain elevators
Oh yeah.
everywhere.
Mold.
I didn't know it then,
Yeah,
but now I
nobody
know
knows
what
it.
I know, and I look back and go, of course, they just stacked all those kernels on top of each other. It would rain,
Right. And then what do you think's
and
happening?
the moisture gets inside.
Exactly.
And those grains, all those kernels that are sitting on top of each other, all the grains that are in there, just grow mold.
And then they grind it and
They grind it and
food
make
out.
tortilla chips
Yeah.
that are really yummy, but
Yeah.
it's not. I fully believe that when we talk about root cause,
Right.
autoimmune, hormone dysregulation, all of those things, we got to go back to toxins.
Right. Yeah. And detox the body, and people
Yes.
don't always understand the importance of a detox. They think, well, it sounds like a good thing to do, but what is it really doing for me? Well, it's not only reversing disease, but it's mitigating disease.
Yeah.
You're going to prevent a lifetime of disappointment,
Yeah.
in your health if
Yeah.
you do a regular detox. Do you recommend a regular detox?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, it's really explaining to people there are things in this world that are out of our control.
Mhm.
What I'm breathing in that outside air,
Right.
out of my control.
Right.
What I can control is what I'm putting in my body,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm putting on my body,
Right.
and my indoor environment.
Uh huh.
So those are the things that I teach.
Yeah.
Right? Is what can you control? Because there's so much in life out of your control.
Right.
You have to control your nutrition, your water intake, my indoor air environment, and my personal care.
Yep.
That's the foundation, I feel like,
Mhm.
of what I can do to optimize my health.
And are there like indoor air filters that you
Yeah.
recommend too?
Yeah. I personally have an air doctor,
Okay.
and I don't know that I would buy that one again. I've been doing some research. There's some other ones that are on the market that I think are doing some mold mitigation a little bit better.
Uh-huh.
IntelliPure is one that's on my radar, and Austin Air is another one that I've been looking into.
And are these just filters that you can buy online directly from the company?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and they're, you can do different sizes,
Uh-huh.
and they cover a specific square footage.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's important, here in Arizona, especially because we're so sealed. So mold spores are everywhere. They're outside.
Sure.
And to think that they're not, I don't know, different planet that you're living on, because that's not reality, right?
Right.
And so you open the door to let me in,
Uh-huh.
and mold spores came with me.
Sure.
Okay, we're tightly sealed here. It's going to be, 118 today maybe.
Right.
You're not opening your windows. Where are those mold spores going?
In my respiratory.
I want to make
On my
sure,
skin,
right? Yeah,
Getting in my food, whatever.
right. Or on our pets. Our pets have them too.
Sure.
And so, if there at all is water somewhere,
Mhm.
that's where the spore is going to seek out survival.
Right.
So it's going to find a spot,
Mhm.
and then more, and then more, and then that's when you have colonization, right? And then
Right.
that's when we have sickness, and we have it in Arizona, and I don't feel like people really understand that we have it here. So have an air filter so it's grabbing up those spores
Uh-huh.
and mitigating that. And also there are particular plants that can do that too.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And there are particular essential oils that can be diffused
Oh,
in
yeah.
homes
Yeah.
that can also mitigate
Yeah,
it.
that's a really good point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 things that we can do to help control our environment in the house.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And I know, back to skin, people will put lotions on their skin and things on their lips because their lips are dry, and it's really not because you didn't put enough lotion on or enough lip balm or whatever. It's because either we're toxic or we're not getting enough of the right nutrient. Right.
Yes.
And so people spend way too much money on these personal hygiene products when you don't really need the majority of them.
Right. I agree. And so I like to say your skin is an outward expression of your inward health.
Yeah.
Right?
It really is.
So if your cells are dehydrated, then your skin looks dehydrated.
Right.
Right? And so are the cells properly even absorbing the hydration that's coming in your body?
Yep, and over time your skin will reveal how well you've taken care of yourself,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes. And
It doesn't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to what you're saying, detoxes, I recommend people detox a couple times a year.
Yeah, so like a good solid detox. What about an ongoing detox, like a weekly thing, or
Meaning?
like for example, one detox method that I recommend is coffee enemas.
Oh,
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Coffee enemas are great. I know it might sound weird at first, but coffee enemas are one of the best, and make sure it's organic.
Yeah.
Make sure it's organic, because there's so much crap in
There is.
in commercial coffee. So the coffee enemas, like what I recommend is a 3-week every day for 3 weeks,
Oh, I love it.
and then ongoing each week, once a week, and then it's up to the patient. Then you could do it like once every 6 months, the 3 weeks, but to maintain with a weekly coffee enema, just to mitigate anything that you're exposed to on a daily basis. So
Amazing.
that's kind of what my recommendation is. And I got a lot of my information for that from the Gerson Clinic.
Yeah.
Because, just because it's known to be a cancer treatment clinic, they treat other diseases, and people can implement these strategies into their life to prevent disease.
Yeah.
It's not just about treating, chronic and severe disease.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the coffee enemas are great. Also, the deactivated turmeric. So, you add the pepper to it, it makes it more bioavailable. But when we don't add the pepper to it, and we take I'll recommend a teaspoon 3 times a day between meals. And what it does is it has a similar effect to the coffee enema, where it goes through, it just stays on the surface, and it pulls the toxins out of the gallbladder to dump the waste from the liver.
Yes.
So there's different things that I recommend ongoing, and you wouldn't do that daily, of course, but at first, the same thing, I recommend it for 3 weeks, and then once a week.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah. So I think an ongoing detox, I would recommend an ongoing detox for my patients, just because we don't want to wait till we have a toxic burden up here and then try and get rid of it.
Exactly.
Right? Because in the meantime, we could be developing cancer or autoimmunity or something that we could have prevented otherwise, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the coffee enemas and just how they support that liver detoxification.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And you know what my patients say? They say, I feel amazing now that I'm doing the coffee enemas.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we can just get them there.
I had a patient that I didn't really have that conversation with him, but I think he thought it was kind of weird, and then he started doing it because he saw value in the things I was doing for him.
Sure.
So he finally started doing them. He says, yeah, I feel way different. I feel really good. And I said, keep doing it, because
Absolutely.
Getting rid of symptoms of disease is not an overnight thing. It could take 2 years. It took you 20 years to get here.
Yeah.
So it just depends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think coffee enemas too are, I tell my clients, it's like the first time you walked into the gym and you thought, what do I do?
Yeah.
And you feel, when the first time you do the workout, you feel like an idiot and that you did all of it wrong.
Yeah.
That's a coffee enema.
Yeah.
And
It's
I tell them,
this is weird.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I feel amazing after I do this.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And then you think, okay, I'm going to keep doing that because I'm curious about it and I hear that it's good for me.
Yeah.
And so you just keep showing up to maybe that class, that boot camp class, or whatever it is that you're doing. And eventually you're like, oh, I got this. That's how coffee enemas are.
Yeah.
Eventually it just clicks and connects and you've got your routine down because it takes work to do it.
Right.
I brewed my coffee 2 days ago. It's in my fridge. I didn't, I thought I was going to get to it that afternoon and I did not.
Right.
And the next day I did not. And I thought, okay, well, at least my coffee's brewed. So today I can take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let it sit on the counter until it's room temperature.
Right.
And then I'll do my enema today.
Yeah, you don't want it too hot or too cold.
No. But yeah, it's just about consistency.
Yeah.
And that's what you're teaching them is consistently do this.
Right.
Right? I love the 3 weeks on of doing it every day. That's amazing.
Yeah, it just really just
Love
detoxes the
that.
body, and then ongoing weekly.
That's great.
Yeah.